Hi, this is Derek.
And this is Carrie from the Better Conversations podcast.
When we aren't talking about money and marriage, we're listening to Stephanie O'Brien on the Moved by Purpose podcast.
If you're always brought up a certain way and all of a sudden you leave that way, it leaves huge questions open. But fortunately, I found my way, and every time I kept going on my own track, I got better and better and better. And I found my success because my success was tied to what I loved and my natural talents and interests. And that's kind of what I always inspire and encourage others with.
Are you longing to know what your purpose is? Are you on the wrong career path? Do you feel like there must be more to life? Don't worry, there's hope. It's time to be moved by purpose. Now your host, Stephanie O'Brien.
Hey, welcome to the Moved by Purpose podcast. It is your host, Stephanie O'Brien, and today's guest is a kindred spirit. We have so much in common, so many passions that are shared. We could have kept going on and on. What a fabulous woman, and I am so thrilled that you guys get to know her a little bit better. Her name is Maura Sweeney. She is an author, podcaster, international speaker, and a Huffington Post contributor, and she has been recently named the Ambassador of Happiness by UNESCO Center for Peace. The former corporate manager, business owner, and homeschooling mom recreated herself into a 21st century cultural journalist sharing transformative thought for a better world. She is amazing, and without further delay, let's get into this interview. Welcome to the show, Maura. I am so honored to meet you and have you on today. I'm really looking forward to this interview.
Stephanie, thanks so much for having me. I was so excited to be part of your show because I realized we have so many common interests and passions.
Yeah, I'm really excited to really dive deep into what we share, and I really think this is going to be very valuable. And without any delay, I ask the same question to every guest, not the same guest, but
that could be boring.
Yeah, the same question to every guest, because these are my favorite question to ask and to listen to the answer to, which is what things have really led you to doing what you do today? What events or significant moments? People can go take as long as they want on this question, but maybe highlight some of the key events in your life that has led you to do what you do today.
Okay, and I guess your audience knows what I do today, which is several things, but the general thing that I do is inspire people to live an authentic and happy life from the inside out, rather than from the outside, where society is always giving us these mixed messages that oftentimes have us doing things that really don't resonate with us inside. So, what a great, perfect question to ask me, because my life story probably goes back to when I was about 5 years old. I grew up in New Jersey, and I remember being a very observant child. Now, did I know that I was observant? I'm not sure. Some people attribute it to the fact that I was left-handed and I would see everything in reverse, meaning I'd see everything from the end first. In fact, my cousin said to me, Maura, don't you remember when you were a little girl, we had you evaluated twice in, I guess it was in university setting. She said, because you would write things sentence after sentence and everything was written backwards, so the only way you could read your writing was to put it up in a mirror. So you know how left-handed people will read the book from the end to the beginning, or a magazine from the last page first? That was me. And so here I am growing up in northern New Jersey. We had all of our friends and our relatives, it was multi-generations, living around us. And I watched people, my elders, they would be grandparents, great-grandparents, elder aunts, elder uncles, but generally people who would be at the mature side of life toward the end of life. And watching them all, I detected a couple of things. Some of them were very happy and very fulfilled in life. You could see it, you could feel it, it was manifest always. And other people were not happy. They were angry, they were frustrated, crabby, complaining. And this is what I determined as a little child. The people who were happy were those living out of their sense of identity, and they were doing what they loved, and their personality and their interests were all given outlet, or they gave outlet to their interests. Those who were not happy were people who succumbed to maybe to what the world told them they were supposed to do, maybe what their families told them to do, and as they got older, they never broke out of it and became kind of, I would say, not only angry with others, but angry at the world because they weren't living an authentic life. So that was what I observed. And as a little girl, when everybody else in school was looking at books saying, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you want to be a nurse, a doctor, a president, an astronaut? That was a biggie back then. I decided I wanted to be happy when I grew up. Happy. Now, what do you call that, right? Happy? Now, here's the irony for my life. Although I decided I wanted to grow up to be a happy adult, to me, that was, if I'm going to be here for a certain number of years, and at the end of life, you know, we have certain things we acquire during the years, but then we give them up as we get older. And I thought that was my goal and that was my value. But growing up, my family expected me to be a lawyer. And that was all that I was ever groomed for. So even though I had other interests, and even though I didn't have an interest in practicing law because it sort of went against my personality, my interests, I was halfway through law school.
Oh, wow.
And I realized I needed to get off that track. And that's been my life story. When I got off that track, I thought, oh, my gosh, I'm disappointing my family. I had just married. My mother-in-law probably thought, oh, this girl's going to take advantage of my son, which was never the case. I needed to jump off that track of what the world, or in my case, my family expected of me. It was not just academics, but it was everything that they envisioned for me. And that meant living in New Jersey, even though I always wanted to live in a warm weather climate. And I live now in Florida, so I'm thrilled about that. I was a very creative child who wanted to learn how to dance, but instead I played the piano and I went to art classes. So in many ways, I was groomed inside of a box. I will never, and I hope your listeners hear this, it is in my nature never to see anything as a detriment in life. I never, ever see myself as a victim. In fact, I look back on everything and I think everything that has ever happened in my life, even those things that were contrary, were such learning experiences. And in the case of leaving law school, it proved a catalyst to what I do right now, because I knew what it was like to feel almost dead on the inside. When I say that, I mean almost spiritually dead, in the sense that, you know, most of us would grow up, we have life dreams and hopes and aspirations, and I felt like I was being sentenced to, I don't want to say a jail cell, that's not so, but you know, after you go to school and you work so hard and you're looking forward to being a productive adult that says, this is what my contribution is going to be to the world, I felt like it was a drudgery for me to go forward for the next 40 years and practice in the career of law that I wasn't interested in. So that decision to get off that track of being something I was groomed for but was not on the inside was a huge catalyst, because I thought, I don't even know what else I want to do. How do I find what I love? And so in the course of time, I've been in corporate management for about a decade. I was a homeschooling mom for several years with our daughter, helped my husband launch a business. And when our daughter was getting ready to go away to college, it was my time to do what I always wanted to do. And I'm now known as the ambassador of happiness. So I found my own happiness in life over the decades, and I take everything that I've ever done. I've traveled to over 50 countries. I've been a mom. I've been married for over 34 years. And I take everything, even from my corporate management background, and I help inspire others to find their way to happiness from the inside out. And it's a happiness is very much combined with life purpose, interests, curiosities, talents. And when we put those things together, we become so free. I really want to say we sparkle like we're made to sparkle when we're born onto this earth. And I think we become very inspirational to other people around us. And in my sense, I think that's a key to discovering ourselves at a completely different level than what we've all been accustomed to. Long answer to a quick question, right?
Yeah, but I honestly love the answers to these questions. Even though it's the same question, it's such a different answer. And it's because we get to really know you and your journey. And There's so many pieces. I know that there's someone or many people listening that can totally relate to that. And one of the things that really jumped out at me about your story was that you had the courage to leave law school despite how pretty much everyone around you or the way you might have been brought up, how society says you're supposed to function, would most likely resist that and be unsupportive of that. It almost seemed extreme or radical, maybe even rebellious. I don't even know how to describe. I mean, that's at least how words I've used to describe my own choices, and that I've heard other people use to describe their fears affiliated with going against the status quo or going against the norm or doing something against what even people they love very dearly think they should do.
Or how about this? Not only love very dearly, but want to please.
Yeah, they want to make them happy.
Yes.
They want to make them proud.
Right. And, I'm glad you brought all of that up because it does take a certain amount of courage. But in my case, I really didn't think I had it in me. Fear, yes, because I remember the closer I got to graduation, the closer I got to this life sentence. When I say that, I don't mean to sound dramatic, but I'm telling you, it felt like a life sentence. I had too much to give, and I was going to be trying to put my energies in a place where I had no interest. It was a burden for me that was so heavy. And I'll tell you this, for whoever's listening today, I could remember that I was commuting back and forth for my law school years. And so I had this seat or this chair at home in our apartment that I would use to study. And I would have the law books out and I would be studying before I'd get in the car and go to school. My husband came in after work and he found me in that chair. And he said to me, Maura, you didn't go to school today? And I forgot about this. He said, you don't remember this? He said, you couldn't answer my question. He said, you opened your mouth and nothing came out. And he said, you didn't have any words because you were that afraid. I was trying so hard to do everything that was expected of me and to be that nice first child, the pleaser, the achiever. And I couldn't even find the words. I was that distraught on the inside. So you could say it was courage and it was fear mixed together. But I knew that I just couldn't stay on that track. And I'm so glad I got off, but I won't underestimate the fear that accompanied me because what it was a fear of who am I? It was that identity fear. If you're always brought up a certain way and all of a sudden you leave that way, it leaves huge questions open. And I'm sure other people look at issues like that, according to their own circumstances, but those were mine. But fortunately, I found my way, and every time I kept going on my own track, I got better and better and better. And I found my success because my success was tied to what I loved and my natural talents and interests. And that's kind of what I always inspire and encourage others with. You can always do well when you're happy, but you can't always do, when you're not happy, you can't always do as well because you're fighting against your own gravity.
Oh, so true. The spot that you're talking about, and this is the spot I coach people through, and it's such I don't know how to describe it. This decision, it's a life-changing decision. Mm-hmm. But it's also a lot of work. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknown, and it takes a great deal of faith, courage, bravery, whatever you want to use, to really take this step and declare or decide or define, however you want to call it, that this is the time. And for me, it took me a while to work up to it. There were a lot of things in my life I had to let go of and work through before I came to the realization of what it is that I wanted to do. I was in this unsettled, unhappy place for a while and had to process through that. And, some people I hear it just takes a few months of unhappiness. Some people, honestly, live their entire life unhappy. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, for me, I had a few years, and I think everyone's pain tolerance is a little bit different. But, I finally reached a pain point that was so unbearable that the thought of remaining the same was scarier to me and more painful than the thought of changing.
Well, I think that you've probably said it very well. We all have different thresholds, and you get to the point where, okay, the pain is so great, or in my case, the dread was so great, or the sentence was so great that I just couldn't support it anymore. My body wasn't, my emotions weren't, and I just needed to step off. So it was a huge life change for me. But everybody has one. Everybody's got their own opportunity to change. But we can't change unless we choose it for ourselves.
And I was talking to you pre-recording about how I've been approached by youth pastors or parents that have kids either entering college or in their first year of college that are really distraught because these kids are saying that they don't need a degree, they don't need to go to college, they want to pursue their passion in music or acting or photography or whatever else it is. And, you know, I had one pastor tell me that, like, all of his kids are convinced they're going to be the next YouTube star. And I'm listening to him and, like, I understand his concern. At the same time, I was kind of excited that all of these kids are, like, so informed about all the options they have, and they're filling their mind with this content that I didn't even have as accessible to me as these, you know, middle school and high school kids do. And they're getting inspired to think outside of the box and to not necessarily conform to the way that their parents and all the older generations are telling them to be. And this is a tough kind of balance because there's complete wisdom in older counsel. Like, I don't necessarily support the thought that you ignore your older generation because there's so much wisdom from them to be learned. But at the same time, you don't want to give into that fear. So this is kind of a tough issue for me. And I'm like, I don't even know. I see the panic in the parent's eyes who's like, my college kid is threatening to drop out of college because she's starting a YouTube channel and has a decent following, and that's where she's going to make her money. And I don't see how that, and it's such an odd concept for them to get their head around. Even when I tell people what I do, like I have a podcast and I work out of, and I've had to change the language. I have to say I work out of my home office rather than I work from home because there's different things that people think of when you say certain things. But I just think that people have a hard time getting non-traditional work or doing something outside of the norm. It's like, how do you describe that you're not a nurse? But I still have a difficult time describing what I do.
Well, you know something,
you
bring up a lot of different issues here as I'm following along with you, but that's all right. I think it's par for the course. I don't know your age, but I'm 57, so we're probably easily a generation apart. You're probably my daughter's age. And here's an interesting thought. I also, in the course of my writings, and it's just the way I am, I study culture, I study changing trends, I study economics, I study the various ways in which we look at the icons. And I will tell you, like my grandparents' generation, the value system was such that you would get a job in a big company and stay there until you retired, and then you'd be paid a pension. That was the old model. I used to be an executive recruiter, and I remember thinking that if anybody was a quote-unquote job hopper, let's say they changed jobs within 4 or 5 years, they were a job hopper and they were considered unstable. Now, this was back in the 80s. So there are a lot of different ways things change. Then if you remember you wouldn't, but the big model was you've got to go to college because that's what will guarantee you the better job and therefore give you a better lifestyle. Well, do you know right now that is not the case? And I will share this with you. I graduated Boston College. I have 2 degrees there. I have half of my law school degree. I still learn. I'm always doing things. Our daughter graduated BU. She's at Harvard right now. But those types of things, as good as they may sound, let's say, will not guarantee us a job or an income on the other side. Now, maybe if you come out in teaching, in nursing, as a doctor, certain specific fields that really require that kind of training. But beyond that, I have to tell you this. I speak at a lot of colleges, both in the U.S. and overseas, and I work with millennials. I am amazed at how much kids have devoted into following what I want to say an older model that their parents acquired, which is you get into the best school you can, you get good grades, when you get out, there's going to be a job for you. Do you know how disappointing that is for a lot of kids that'll have an undergrad and a grad degree, a master's, and they are working making coffee? You know, years ago, you needed an 8th grade graduation, maybe, right, to do the coffee. So I look at a lot of things. I also consider even these people coming out of law school today and a lot of these professional programs, some of them will carry student loans of like $200,000, and you could see what they carry. I find it awful. So you realize my answer is as long as your question. We are at a juncture right now where we're between two worlds. In fact, I almost want to say that the old world is passing away more and more rapidly every day, and we're getting closer to something new. We had our daughter down from New York over the holidays, and she said, you know, Mom, I think in the next 5 years, the university system is going to be completely overhauled. And she said, you know that places like Stanford University and Harvard offer courses for free online. She said, this idea about people investing so much time in traditional methods and so much money for things that really aren't going to help them, it's all going to have to change. So what do you say to parents or children right now? Here's a piece of advice I got, and I thought it was excellent when I was a homeschooling mom. I would go once a year to the homeschooling conference, and I happened to hear one woman that I so connected with. She had her PhD, several master's degrees, and she was also a homeschooling mom. She covered something that she called unschooling, and I didn't realize that's the kind of teacher I was. I did reading and I did math, but I wanted our daughter to connect with everything she read, to become a critical thinker, to learn to love following what she was doing, and I'd use all kinds of methods to inspire that. That's known as unschooling at some level. But this woman gave advice I never forgot. She said she told all of her kids that she was homeschooling, her own children. She said, I am not going to allow you to graduate from high school unless you have acquired a skill that will pay you money. And so think about this. She said, you're welcome. She said, you could go to every university you want to after that, but you are not going to get a high school diploma from me as your homeschooling parent until you have a skill that will allow you at any time to go out and support yourself. So that meant, do you do hair? Do you know how to do upholstery? I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, it's a skill base that child will have that they can always depend upon to become self-supporting, even if it's just at a very nominal level. And for any child who wants to be the next YouTube star, now a lot of young kids get so caught up in the popular culture and they just want to run around and be famous for 15 minutes, not realizing 15 minutes of fame is over in 15 minutes. You follow? So to have a skill, whatever that may be, and there's so many ways we can get trained today for less or for very, very cheap amounts of money, and yet follow something we like, develop a skill that will allow us our own little cottage industry, and then from that point forward, that'll free certain kids up if they want to go and explore their music, their creativity, their YouTube channel. And maybe the YouTube channel, something on the side, but that is a very good in-between spot so that they're sort of paying homage or honor to the traditions of what has worked in the past, and they're not going to be quote-unquote flashes in the pan or immature kids that just think they could do nothing. But at the same time, they're developing skills where they know they've got something of value within themselves that could help produce an income. And I think it's a really good way of doing both. And I hope that answers a little bit your question.
No, it does. It does. I think it answers it very, very well. And, and sometimes I think the one pastor I was talking to, he was, his concern was like, they lack the hustle. They think like the life of a YouTube star is just sleeping until noon, playing video games all day, and recording a 5-minute video, and you make ridiculous amounts of money. And, so I think there can be a little bit of a disillusionment of that, most people that have those channels, those massive channels, have businesses. They're business owners,
Yes.
typically working 80 hours or more a week. So, with a ton of hustle.
I am so glad you brought that up, the hustle factor. I'm so glad. When I told you I study really culture. Do you realize this younger group of kids, let's say, there's always a new generation coming around, but many of them were brought up in a different paradigm. They were brought up in an era when their parents were so kid-focused, they wanted to give everything to the kids. Well, it's a wonderful thing, and even kids that are mildly grown up at this point maybe had parents that were very affluent before the economic downturn, and they were brought up with this whole mentality that the money's always there, and that they were almost entitled without even realizing that. Well, we're not in that same society anymore. We're not in that same economy. So that really is up to the parents to be a good example. I would even say to challenge the kids to say, something, you want that? Then you need to do X and Y and Z to prove to me you're worthy of that. And set little goals along the way. And, I'm thinking now back even with my daughter. While she was homeschooled, she helped out in our family business. She was very industrious, and it was important to her to know she could do things on her own. So we'd find little things she could do, and that's something that some kids have already in them. And for other kids who don't, they need to model after it. They need to have those goals, and they need to make connections between hard work and persistence and rewards. Not every reward needs to be given on a grand scale, but to learn that it's a life skill. And, we could look to the parents, we could look to culture, which always shows the flash in the pan, but there are realities. And I think it's part of everybody's responsibility to kind of play into a future success model.
Yep. And I love the model ever since, I just love owning my own business and being responsible for my own income. And a lot of people freak out at that thought. And I realize entrepreneurship is not for everyone. It really isn't. But I do if you prefer to work for someone else, at least study an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yes.
Because there is something, even if somebody else writes your paycheck for you, I still think that you still are responsible for your own income. If you develop that mindset, I really think that will honestly blow your career up, accelerate it. But a lot of people will just kind of be, at least where I used to work, and some of the people I hear talking about their jobs, they just show up. They do what they need to do, and then they go home, and then they complain that they only got a 3% cost of living raise. And
yeah, you're right.
You're
right. So in other words, they don't realize they're contributing to their own life problems.
Right, yeah. They think, the moment they think that their employer is responsible for their financial well-being, which a lot of people function in that mindset, yeah. I think they live defeated and they hurt their own financial growth.
Yes, or they make themselves even a little more vulnerable. You brought up so many good issues. When you were saying an entrepreneurial mindset, something hit me. How about this one? A business mind, to be business minded. Sometimes the idea of an entrepreneur is so out there that people can't relate to because it's like, whoa, the great unknown. But think about this. If you can run your own business, in a sense, you are your own entrepreneur. I'll give you an example. Before you and I spoke on the phone, I was communicating with your virtual assistant. Now, here's a woman who is outstanding in a certain set of skills, and she does something that she can replicate on a routine basis. She's excellent at what she does, and she likely offers her services out to people not only like you, but to others. So take a person right now who's working in corporate America or who's been doing the same thing. If they were to have a business mind, they could conceivably take a certain skill that they have and subcontract it out to several business people or several businesses. In fact, do you know how many corporations were letting go of people and then rehiring them as consultants? So that process, helps make us more self-reliant. And, years ago, that's how it was. And then we all got involved in the corporate mentality. Well, let me find a job out there or a corporation that'll support me. But I'll tell you, when you learn how to think that way as you're running your own business, you do kind of, in a sense, grow up emotionally, psychologically, where you're not thinking like, see, it's interesting. When we're little children, we think our parents take care of us. But then when we get older, we can adopt a similar mentality, but it shows up in different ways. Well, I'll let the government take care of me. I'll let my corporation or my boss take care of me. But by developing a little bit of a business savvy or business mind, you could say, what skills, what talents, what abilities do I have that fill in a niche or a need in the marketplace that I could even do on the weekends or in the evenings? I mean, there's so many possibilities now, and they don't have to think that they are literally conquering the world or creating something brand new by being an entrepreneur, but it's being innovative and smart, where you become more of a driver of your career rather than a victim of an employer who might have a downturn or who might decide he's got a nephew or a friend who could do a better job than you. Right?
Yes, or someone they can hire in for a lot less than you.
Exactly. And I think that's why I keep telling you, we're really between two worlds right now. Economic worlds and social worlds and all of that when it comes to the educational system, how we view jobs, how midlife people find new jobs, and how young kids coming out of school or navigating that whole educational system are going to be doing things. But I think you just have to kind of adjust your mind a little bit, work with whatever's within you, and just start traveling, taking some actions, and developing something on your own. And I think it's very empowering, and it makes you happy.
Yes, which circles back to it makes you happy. And, okay, my final question, which may even take, I don't know how long. You might, because we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask, if you happen to know certain steps or key things, or maybe even just one critical step to take when it comes to even identifying what will make me happy. How do I know?
All right.
And I know that's a doozy question.
No, it is a doozy, but I have a great answer, and I've found that this has been so effective, and many people have asked me the same thing. It doesn't even matter what age you are. When we grow up and all of the world, it could be the YouTube channels, it could be TV, it could be parents, it could be our culture, anything tells us that we need to be X and Y and Z, or we need to do it this way. After a while, we forget who we are and what we want. It's just the way it works. So what I ask people to do is this. It's a very simple exercise. I learned somewhere that wherever you put your hand, that's also where your attention goes. Now, we're normally functionaries of our own intellect. It's what society tells us. It's where we live all the time, in our brain. But by putting your hand over your heart, like let's say right below the collarbone, kind of like you're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance, closing your eyes, and reviewing your past life, like when you're little and you're growing up, and think about everything you used to do and everything you love doing. And the moment a thought comes to your mind that puts a smile on your face, stay right there, because therein lies one of the seeds to your future career. I want to say your happiness seed, your life purpose seed. As soon as you go back to these little times and places, there's going to be something there. I will tell you this. I told you when I was growing up, I was supposed to be a lawyer. When I was 5 years old, I remember sitting in my grandfather's office, and he was a very, very well-known, very powerful lawyer, and that was my model of what I was supposed to do. Next door to his office was his waiting room, and I was drawn to one thing: the typewriter that his legal secretary used. I would sit next to her, and I would watch her in such rapt attention, I can't tell you. Now, that makes me smile, and you know why? Because I looked at that typewriter as a little girl, and I thought, whoever can put words to paper and make these words official, because this woman was always developing official documents in duplicate, triplicate, and they were putting really neat things. And I'm only 5 at the time. I knew I had an interest in the written word, I had an interest in publishing, and I had an interest in taking ideas, putting them into this was back in the 60s, into print in such a way that others would read those words and consider them. Now that for me was such a fascination. I loved that typewriter and taught myself how to type when I was in 6th grade. It ended up giving me a skill set that I used throughout college, that I used on, whenever, because I would go and type in different firms. So it became a little means of making money for me. But do you know, later in life, I would end up becoming an author, a Huffington Post blogger, and I'm a publisher of a series of books. So do you see how we may not know how these little childhood or growing up interests are going to materialize, but as we follow those things that make us smile, those things that we're curious about, that we would be thinking about doing even before the world told us what we can or cannot do, we pursue those things little by little, and they do materialize into something. And I can't even tell you what it feels like. It's like you could find, in a sense, your own star. And as you pursue those interests, you become a star in your own right. You never have to compete with anybody because there's nobody else like you. How did I know I was going to be in my 50s, do what I always wanted to do, and I was going to come out in many ways that would be a modern-day version of using a typewriter and being an idea person and sharing happiness and traveling the world? That was the other thing I wanted to do. So my story is nothing more than a replication of everybody's life story. Take what you love in those quiet times, those things that make you smile, and look for ways to connect. Go to a meetup. Go online. Go interview somebody who's doing what you're interested in. Be around people like that. Pick up the lingo. Look for opportunities to volunteer, to practice. There's so many ways to practice things today. And over time, what happens is you keep pursuing these things, which also develops a lot of self-discipline. The world starts recognizing you as an expert in that area. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm known now as the ambassador of happiness. I got called by UNESCO to speak at the Nelson Mandela Day, and they gave me that name, and now I'm having it trademarked. There was no such thing as an ambassador of happiness, but there I was, a little girl at 5 who said, I'm going to grow up to be happy. Funny, right? It's no different from anybody, but I will say this, I'm a very purposed person, and when you follow your passion and you're allowed to, and you're around people that encourage you to, or even if you're not, you'll eventually get somewhere. And you'll be happy and fulfilled.
Well, that was a great ending question. It ended very, very solidly. I love it. I do would love to know how to connect with you, or have people know how to connect with you and how to get more of you. I'm sure they're hooked from this interview. Well, so I'd love to have that opportunity for them to find you.
Thank you. How funny when you said more of you, because my website is Maura for you. More for you. My husband gave me that name, so the main place to find me is my website, Maura, my name, M as in Mary, A-U-R-A, for the number, you the letter, mauraforyou.com. And when they get there, they can connect with all of my blogs. I have over 250 YouTube videos, all of which are really short, and they ask people these reflective questions so that they can figure out from the inside what they're interested in and what's their value system, not what the world tells them, but what's authentic for them. They can connect with my Huffington Post blog. If they love podcasts, I'm on iTunes and Stitcher. There are links to that. And I have books. And the other thing I am just introducing, I'm so excited about, it's my first ever e-course, and it's called Foundations of Happiness. And it's interactive with videos and questions, and it really gives people an opportunity to connect with what they're interested in on the inside. It teaches them how to think in healthy ways and how to really become, I want to say, the master of their lives rather than having the outside world master them. So MauraForYou.com.
Awesome. And what are the names of some of the books you've written?
Oh, the whole series, which is found it's on Amazon, but they could get to it by MauraForYou.com. It's called The Art of Happiness. Not to be confused with the Dalai Lama, but I have 6 small books, and every one of them picks up things that are common to everyone, and they're all story-based. One is Exiting the Comfort Zone. One is on judgment. One is on influence. One is on nonsense. And I have a couple of others. But they invite the reader to come in and think about these issues, usually issues that get them stuck in life. And they start thinking about it. Then I introduce them to my life stories. And everybody who hears stories connects because they're connecting their own life story to it. And then it closes with a couple of other questions. Now that you read the story, do you see things anew? Do you see things that will enable you to get unstuck? So go to my website, mauraforyou.com. In fact, I'll even offer your readers something special. My books are only 99 cents, but if they want to write to me, maura@mauraforyou.com, they can request a free copy of the Exiting the Comfort Zone book. And I think that is so foundational to really following your dreams, following your passions, and learning what it's like to, to fall and flub along the way, but to really enter into your joy as you step out into the world following those things you love. So anyway, free book, Exiting the Comfort Zone, if they want to write for it.
Love it. Thank you so much. I will make sure that's added in the show notes, highlighted. So thank you again. It has been an honor. I really enjoyed this interview, Maura, and have a blessed day and rest of your week.
Thanks, Stephanie, and I so appreciate being on your Move by Purpose podcast. Anyway, I love it because it's so much tied with everything I'm interested in. So may every one of your listeners be blessed and inspired.
Thank you.
Developing a little bit of a business savvy or a business mind, you could say, what skills, what talents, what abilities do I have that fill in a niche or a need in the marketplace? I mean, there's so many possibilities now, and they don't have to think that they are literally conquering the world or creating something brand new by being an entrepreneur, but it's being innovative and smart where you become more of a driver of your career rather than a victim of an employer.
And there you have it. That is the fabulous Maura Sweeney. Make sure you check her out. Connect with her at mauraforyou.com. She is fabulous. I could talk to her all day long. What great energy and confidence that she has and wisdom that she has shared with us. So I hope you found this just as much of a treat as I did. If you have not done so already, as always, make sure you subscribe to the Move by Purpose podcast. This is where you get exclusive discounts. I do announce them on the podcast, and I think I said subscribe. Yeah, subscribe to the podcast, but subscribe to the website to get the newsletter where you get exclusive discounts promoted to you such as whenever I open a new program, sometimes I offer free slots, sometimes there's free pilots, sometimes there's extremely discounted pilot courses, sometimes I give free programs away or half off or 75% off or something ridiculous, and that is only available to those on my list. So if you want in on some of those and you're interested in any program, the Passion Project will be starting soon. This is a program for those that want to figure out what the heck I want to do. You know what you're doing is not quite what you want to do for the rest of your life, and it's time for a change. But you don't know what that change is, where to begin, what to do. Maybe you have a clue, but you don't know where to start and what's next. Maybe you know you want to start a business, but what do you focus on? What do you do? There's a lot of things involved. I cover all of it deeply, extensively in Passion Project. You have direct access to me. It is a powerful group. It will change your life. So make sure if you're interested, shoot me an email with the subject line, Passion Project. I will put you on the waiting list where you will have the opportunity to get an exclusive discount available just because you said you were interested, because I reward those who take action. And that discount will be available for a limited time because you have to actually follow through on that action. Sending an email is nothing, but actually committing to yourself and following through is what is rewarded. And you will be rewarded with a very handsome and generous discount. So make sure you send me that email, let me know, and I'll give you the information of start date, what the discount is, and then you will have a window of opportunity to think about it and then take some action, because the more you think about it, the more you won't ever do anything. in my opinion. You just don't. You end up choosing to do the same thing. And so not that I want to promote impulsivity, but I also promote taking action. If you know what you want, go and get it. Quit making excuses. So, love you all. Talk to you next week, and I look forward to hearing from you and seeing your emails over at movedbypurpose.net. Have a fabulous new year.